Good evening, everyone. Let's make a start. My name's Patrick Hall. I'm the Mayor of the City of Canning. It's Tuesday evening, just after 6 p.m. on the 21st of March 2023. I declare the meeting open. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and we pay our respects to elders, both past and present. And may I ask everyone here this evening to please make sure your mobile phones are turned off or at least on silent for the duration of the meeting. The meeting is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. That includes our councillors. Please put away and turn off telephones, please. Whilst electronic meetings are in progress, elected members are also reminded to ensure they leave their camera turned on at all times. I'm not sure why that's in there. Our council meetings are public meetings and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held publicly or personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the city unless it is adopted by resolution of council. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that council meeting. Verbatim meeting minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the city publishes a recording of the meeting. And of course, this meeting is being live streamed. Recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the city's express permission. We move on to item 2, attendance apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Jessie Jacobs, who is unable to be with us this evening. There are no other apologies, and council, aside from Councillor Jacobs, are present. Approved leave of absence. There are no approved leave of absence requests tonight. Disclosures of interest. CEO, have there been any disclosures of interest?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There have been no declarations of financial interest. I have received one declaration of impartiality from Councillor Paul Tuchek in relation to item EN 00423, award of tender FM 03520, street furniture services and advertising, award of tender FM 03520, street furniture services and advertising. The nature of the association is I'm a sales representative for Thrive Real Estate who use signage at bus stops.
Thank you. At item 4, announcements by the presiding member, there are none. Reports of delegates without discussion. Does any elected member wish to table a delegate report? None. Thank you. We move on to question time for the public. First of all, 6.1, responses to previous questions taken on notice. I understand there are none. Questions from the public. I open public question time now, the time being 6:05 p.m. Is anyone in the public gallery wishing to ask a question? Thank you. We'll close public question time now then at 6:05 p.m. and move on to the confirmation of minutes. The confirmation of minutes at item 7, ordinary council meeting held on the 21st of February. The officer's recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on February the 21st, 2023 be confirmed as were circulated. The recommendation is on page 2 of the agenda and the recommendation is currently on screen. Can I have a mover, councillors, for that item? A mover, Councillor Bain, thank you. Seconder? Deputy Mayor Kunza, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let's put that matter to the vote, please.
The motion to confirm minutes has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 8 on the agenda, which is the receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. Item 8.1, petitions, there are none. Item 8.2, presentations, there are also none. At item 3, a request has been approved for a deputation by Miss Melissa Ledger of Zinnia Way in Willetton regarding report EN 004 of 23. And that item is the award of tender FM 035 of 20, the title of the report being Street Furniture Services and Advertising. Ms Ledger, thank you. I understand you're from the Cancer Council of WA, is that right? You have some affiliation? That's right. Okay, we'll just turn that microphone on for you there. Governance, can I get you to turn that microphone on?
Is that working now?
Thank you, it's on. I'll just get you to introduce yourself to the council, please, and just advise you that you have up to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name is Melissa Ledger. I'm the Cancer Prevention and Research Director at Cancer Council Western Australia. I'm here and I have oversight of our programs that focus on tobacco and e-cigarettes, healthy eating and harms from alcohol. I do wish to address Council today in relation to the award of tender street furniture services and advertising, and once again show our support in the awarding of a tender that would restrict the advertising of junk food, alcohol and e-cigarette retailers on City of Canning street furniture, including bus stops, street benches and street litter bins. I'll use the terms of harmful products while I address you this evening, and harmful industries to address all three of those factors tonight. I'd like to build on the deputation that was given by one of my colleagues at the council briefing on the 14th of March. My colleague provided a number of statistics, including the proportion of the population living with overweight and obesity, the number of alcohol and junk food advertisements on bus shelters across Perth and specifically in the City of Canning, and surveys outlining community expectations when it comes to junk food and alcohol advertising on government property. Our most recent survey, which is a representative sample of Western Australians, shows that 3/4 or 77% support removing alcohol advertising from public transport, including bus stops, and 71% support removing junk food and sugary drink ads too. It's made a compelling case based on science for Council to take action. But tonight, I'd like to appeal to the Council's values as you consider the decision before you. What is the right thing to do? For your community, for the health of your residents, to show them you're supporting them to lead the healthiest lives they can. As I address Council, you'll notice a slideshow scrolling through a number of advertisements for harmful products collected within the City of Canning. We carry out audits across metropolitan Perth to ensure the advertising industry doesn't breach its own standard of conduct, which it does, as well as monitor the extent to which our young people are exposed to this advertising. I provide this deputation to urge Council to create a healthy environment for children and young people in the City of Canning, where they are protected from the advertising of harmful products. I ask Council to consider the City's values of authentic, resilient, creative and collaborative during my deputation tonight. There are many opportunities to address the City's values through this tender process, and I'm sure you know them very well, and it was very insightful for me to see them. But under authentic, we've got be responsible in our actions and commitments. Under resilient, we embrace challenges and encourage our people to thrive. We support each other's well-being. Under creative, we're innovative thinkers, encouraged to welcome and try new ideas. Under collaborative, we work together as one team and share our success. As a community, we look out for each other and avoid doing things that put others in harm's way. That's just who we are. The City of Cannington's motto, we are a welcoming organisation where people thrive. We care about each other and our community. But harmful industries continue to get rich by advertising and selling products that harm our health and well-being. Their primary concern is maximising profits, not creating healthy communities. It's the role of government at all levels to set the standards by which these businesses operate. Just like we did with big tobacco, we can protect people from being preyed on by harmful industries by creating rules around how they advertise their products. That means ensuring our public spaces and streets are all free from advertising from harmful products. Let's put our health before profits. I want you to take comfort and courage in the fact that Transport for London removed junk food advertising on the Underground and Transport Network in Greater London and did not lose revenue income. These spaces fill up with other advertisers. The role of the local government is not to help harmful industries profit from targeting children. The role of local government is to side with and support the community. I also ask Council to consider the spirit with which the tender was created. This is about protecting children and young people and the community from industries that profit from junk food, alcohol and e-cigarettes. The details are important to consider now. Otherwise, it could be another 10 plus 5 years before you can make a change. Being on the right side of history is so important. In 20 years' time, will we look back and we realise we allowed the junk food and other harmful industries to target our children? I'm not sure if any of you are as old as me, but I recall tobacco companies were allowed to advertise on every possible surface that they could, right up until the late 80s and early 1990s. We look back now in disbelief. Once advertising restrictions started to come into place, the rates of smoking started to drop. The tobacco industry fought it every way and continue to undermine policies that support healthy communities, much like the junk food, alcohol, e-cigarette and advertising industries could do with the release of your tender. I ask you to be strong, resilient and stand by your values and commitment to the health of your community and residents, and not profits. Every time the logo for a junk food franchise is seen on a bus shelter, that's an ad for their brand. That's an ad a young person will see and potentially pester their parent to buy that food. Directional signs are another ad, another opportunity to undermine council's efforts to create a healthy environment for young people and children. There are good guidelines to support council's decision, ensuring the alcohol and junk food industries have the smallest possible window of influence when using your property to promote their harmful products is your job. Junk food advertising is aggressive, ever-present, and it works. Why else does this industry spend so much money on ads? Marketing and the promotion of junk food influences the decisions we make about the food we buy, the food we eat, and the food our children pester us to buy. Exposing children and young people to alcohol product marketing increases the likelihood that they will start drinking earlier and drink at risky levels. And whilst tobacco and e-cigarette marketing is largely prohibited, any sort of e-cigarette advertising, including for e-cigarette retailers, likely increases young people's intention to use e-cigarettes. And we know non-smokers who start using e-cigarettes are 3 times more likely to take up smoking. I do want to mention the City of Canning's website, specifically the landing page for your public health plan. It really gets to the heart of what I'm trying to say tonight. The City of Canning's first public health plan focuses on developing a healthy, livable and socially connected community for all. Health is not just a matter of personal choice or individual circumstances. The plan supports the development of a healthy community. The plan will protect, promote and improve the health and well-being of the City of Canning. The plan recognises the action the City takes to improve the health outcomes of the community. 36% of City of Canning residents eat takeaway food weekly. We know the food ads they see on government property every day influences this decision. The environment in which we live, being surrounded and bombarded by advertising for junk food at every turn, it's no wonder this figure is higher than the state average. It's time for Council to use every lever and every tool available to turn this figure around. It can start with this tender to remove junk food advertising from your own property. In closing, every level of government should be doing everything in their power to protect children from these harmful advertising and harmful products. The state government is already taking action by removing alcohol marketing from buses, trains and train stations, and are also looking at junk food advertising restrictions. This is such an exciting time for the City of Canning. Creating an environment to support the health of residents is to be commended, and I look forward to hearing your decision. Certainly the time for action is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming along. Councillors, we move to item 9, applications for leave of absence. There are none. Questions by members of which due notice has been given. There are none. Items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public. There are no items brought forward tonight. Reports of committee meetings. We move to the first report, which is 12.1. The CEO is a responsible officer. Reports of committee meetings. The title of the first report being Report of CEO Performance Review Committee held on the 2nd of March 2023. The committee's recommendation appears on screen and is also on page 4 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Spencer-Theriault, thank you very much. A seconder? Councillor Hardeep Singh, thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Nothing to add, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Singh.
Nothing to add, Mr Mayor. I support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney.
Yes, thank you. I just, out of interest, and maybe it's because I'm not looking in the right place, but I would like to know where I could find what the KPIs are for the CEO. Are they on the website? Are they somewhere where the community
I think
can...
the KPIs for the CEO are on the hub. There's a channel on the hub. I'll make sure you have access to it. Can I get back to you with that? I'll give you that information.
They're not on the website for public information?
No, I don't believe they're on the website for public information.
Would there be any reason why that isn't occurring, or can we put them on the website?
I think that's probably a discussion for a later time. I'm not sure that's relevant to the conversation, but I can certainly get back to you with a reason for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Possibly. Thank you. Councillor, is there any other questions before we put the matter to the vote? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote.
The motion to confirm the CEO Performance Review Committee meetings has been carried unanimously with 10 in favour.
Thank you. And just to back up just one step, Councillor Sweeney, the CEO's just reminded me, and I think he's absolutely correct, the new the new Local Government Act reforms that are coming through, I think the proposed reforms include that those and many other reports, but the KPIs of CEOs will need to be published. So I think that's coming through, and that bill has already been introduced to Parliament, and I think that that'll go through fairly quickly. So I think that is definitely coming. Thank you. We move on to item 12.2, the title of the item being Report of Audit and Risk Committee held on the 9th of March 2023. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 5 of the agenda. Can I have a mover for that item, please? I'll move that from the chair. A seconder? Councillor Bain. Thank you. I've got nothing to add other than the recommendation is for the following items to be adopted by Council, and I support the officer's recommendation. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendation too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on the matter before I put it to the vote? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote. For those at home, we just have a slight technical difficulty caused entirely by Councillor Singh. Sorry? Working? Can we just call the vote again? Councillor Singh, are you able to vote? He has voted.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The motion to receive the Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes and recommendations has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. Councillors, we move on to reports, the first of which being from the Office of the CEO. The first report on the agenda is OC 001 of 23. That report title being Motions Carried at the 2023 Annual General Meeting of Electors. There are actually 4 separate motions there. I've had a request from Councillor Singh to separate those out and to have those voted on separately and moved and seconded separately. Councillor Singh, I just wonder whether we might be able to have a compromise in relation to, I know that your interest is for item 2. I wonder if we could actually have that separated and the other 3 items perhaps we consider en bloc.
That's fine, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I think then that is what we will do. Councillors, what I propose to do under the standing orders then is to separate item 2 in the agenda. We will actually ask for a mover and a seconder in a moment for that matter. Items 1, 3 and 4 will be dealt with en bloc. I'll deal with items 1, 3 and 4 first. We'll come then to item 2. So items 1, 3 and 4, those motions will be dealt en bloc. Can I have a mover, please, for those 3? Councillor Sarah Sabiri. Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. And a seconder. Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo. Thank you. Just in relation to those three items, Councillor Sabiri, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add. I support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I too support the officer recommendation and I have nothing to add. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak on those items before we put them to the vote? Thank you. We'll put items 1, 3 and 4 to the vote on block. You're voting for all three of those. Thank you.
Parts 1, 3 and 4 of motion OC-00123 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. We move then to motion 2, which is encapsulated in the officer's recommendation, the officer's report. Councillor Singh, I understand you'd wish to move an amendment to that item. I understand you've been working with governance and also the city's officers, and I believe that your request, your amendment, will be put on screen in just a moment. And I believe that it is. First of all, before I ask for a seconder for that amendment, I'll just ask, please, for you to read through it and make sure that that is the amendment you wish to propose. Can we scroll down a little bit?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Can I just ask then, can I just get you to scroll up a bit? Part 3, can I just have a look at, part C? Yeah, I'd be pleased to second your amendment, Councillor. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, the city's security incentive scheme continues to prove very popular with our residents. Since starting this initiative in 2020, the city supported over 545 residents to improve their security, subsidizing 1,206 security items, including 201 CCTV systems. The allocated budget for each of the 4 rounds delivered to date has been expended quickly. In the latest budget allocation of $20,000 was expended within 5 months, enabling 155 residents to access incentives to install 310 security items. Each round of the scheme has shown a steady increase in the number of CCTV systems installed. This year, CCTV systems were most popular security items installed, but it still only makes up 34.5% of total applications received for SIS scheme. In relation to mobile CCTV units, their deployment is usually positively received by residents, and feedback indicates they have the desired impact of deterring antisocial behavior. The city currently owns 3 mobile CCTV units, meaning there is often a wait list for their deployment. The proposed budget allocation would enable the city to further expand their initiative and improve response time to emerging issues. The development of an annual CCTV system priority plan will provide clarity regarding the city's plan and locations for upgraded or new fixed CCTV installations. The cost to purchase a mobile unit can vary anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000. City officers have looked into the options of renting CCTV trailers and believe this may be a more cost-effective option where mobile companies can deploy and manage on our behalf. Initial cost estimates indicates that for $50,000, we will be able to deploy an additional 4 units approximately 10 times. This, coupled with our existing 3 trailers, would enable far greater coverage, particularly of called hotspots areas as they arise. This implies antisocial behavior in Arthur Street, which has been recently raised in our annual general meeting. Again, the motion is to list an amount on the budget, and this will enable city officers enough time to assess the best option for discussion during the budget process. Should the existing security incentive scheme budget be increased by $80,000, which will bring it to a total of $100,000, the program would be able to accommodate more than 1,000 rebates at $100 each. Now, please note, this number only reflects total number of CCTV applications that could be accommodated the maximum amount of $100 and does not include rebates of lesser value that city currently offers for other security items like video doorbells, door locks, etc. So the chances are there will be far greater than 1,000 rebates supplied using these $100,000. By comparison, the most round of SIS provided 155 rebates total. So in the latest round of SIS, there was 155 rebates. While the majority of SIS applications in most recent round were for CCTV systems, they make up just 34%, with the remaining 66% of rebates being of lesser value items. This motion is only seeking city to list an amount on the draft budget. How this gets funded will be discussed during the budget process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillors. I'll just speak quickly on the matter, only to say that a recent survey by the City of Canning, and we all know this because we received a copy of it, listed community safety as the #1 concern for our residents. I mean, that's unequivocal. And I think it's important that, all of us understand that whilst crime detection is not necessarily within the remit of local government, all governments must play a role. All citizens, all communities must play a role, and the response must be holistic to it. And I think this is a sensible change to empower people in the communities that most need it now, and to broaden the appeal of the scheme that we've had in place for so many years. And I don't need to remind council that that scheme is oversubscribed every year, such is the demand from people trying to access a rebate to put in either security windows or security doors or screens or security locks or CCTV systems. So this is not all about CCTV, but it plays a significant part about it. And, I can't help as Mayor, but to look at some of the claims on social media. I know what's actually happening in some of the suburbs of our great municipality, and I know the issues around crime that most councils actually are experiencing, but people live through St James, Bentley, Queen's Park, East Cannington and Cannington, and to a lesser extent, all of our suburbs right across the city, I think are calling for local governments to step forward in playing a role. And $100,000 is a dot point on a decimal point dot point on our balance sheet. And this will be a matter that will be deliberated by council during the budget process. It's not a decision that will be taken by us tonight, but it'll be taken by us when we come to our budget. Councillor Singh is simply bringing it forward as a discussion piece, and I think it's a worthy one. And I really do look forward to hearing the response to this matter if it gets through this evening. If it is adopted by council, and I hope it is, that I think it'll be wholly supported by our community, that this city is stepping forward to do something for its community, a tangible measure to broaden the scope of our current SIS scheme. Currently, at $100 with $20,000 in the kitty, we're only able to assist about 200 homes. This will extend it out far greater than that, maybe 500% increase in the number of residents that we will be able to assist. And that means that there's a significant increase on eyes on the street for the police, because if these systems have to be dovetailed into what is actually happening with other systems. I just think making people feel safer at home is a key part of community safety, and we all play a role in crime prevention. And I don't think we can sit back any longer and say that this is not something we should be involved in. State government has made it pretty clear that we have a role to play, and I think it's about time that we played it. That's all I have to say on the matter. Anyone wish to speak against it? Councillor Deputy Mayor.
No, Mr Mayor, I just want to ask through you to the CEO, can you just confirm that if council was to support this, that it would actually be a discussion point through the budget process, that we'll have a specific part of the budget workshops, given the limited time to discuss? Staff won't just take it verbatim that that's the figure that we want to use.
CEO.
The council's decision, if this is supported tonight, is that we list those things in our draft budget. We will do that if it's supported, but obviously the budget workshops will clarify council's broader intent as we work forward. So I'm very sure that the SIS will be part of those conversations going forward. We'll make sure that that there is a specific opportunity to talk about that and debate it during those workshops.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Look, I support the amendment. My biggest hesitancy is with B. I think I've thought for a while with respect to C that the city should invest more into mobile CCTV trailers because they perform an important role.
Turn off that back
And
microphone.
we should have more resources. But with respect to B, whilst I agree with 99% of what Councillor Singh and what the Mayor has said, I don't think it's just a dot point on our balance sheet. Just because the state government and federal government doesn't invest into this what they should, doesn't mean that we should necessarily step in and charge some ratepayers to pay for security for other ratepayers. The reality is the Road Safety Trauma Fund, that gets funded by fines and gets reinvested into road safety across the state. The proceeds of crime, just last week, they got $300,000 at Perth Airport. That was well publicised, and that should be reinvested into schemes like this, and it should be funded by proceeds of crime. And so, whilst I applaud the efforts so far that the city has taken to try to get the state government to fund this space appropriately, I have real hesitancy with stepping in to fill the void just because they're in a way abrogating their responsibility. I think that the state should fund this through proceeds of crime, and the federal government used to as well. And it's a shame that we've been put in this position to respond to the community. Yes, one of the major issues through the Strategic Community Plan was community safety, and we need to do all we can within our remit to respond to that. But that doesn't mean necessarily filling in the space. So I'm supporting this, but I look forward to conversations through the budget process as to what exactly we do.
Thank you. Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo, and then I'll come to Councillor Bain.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just with E, I've just got a query. We know that main roads have network CCTV on major intersections. Could we perhaps look at consultation with main roads? There's nothing worse than doubling up on CCT infrastructure, especially if main roads have a plan to install in certain areas.
CEO, can that play a part in that consultation? Sorry, Director.
Yes, most definitely we can consult in the development of that plan with main roads.
Thank you.
So may I ask if I could, Councillor Singh, if I could just include in there to develop an annual CCTV in consultation with Main Roads WA to guide the installation and upgrade?
You can certainly, well, we need to deal with this first because it's an amendment, so we can't amend an amendment at the moment. But just 1 second, we're going to do that in any case, and that's on the public record. You're saying, Director, that actually will happen?
Yes, that's correct. But I guess I'm just conscious that I wouldn't want to limit us to just saying main roads, because we would be looking to make sure we're consulting with all the right people and players. So we will definitely do it. That's on the public record, but I'd like to think we would consult more broadly than just main roads.
Yeah, okay, that's fine then. Thanks.
You satisfied with that? Thank you. Anyone else, councillors? Councillor Sweeney?
Yes, thank you. And I think an extension to that, the most important people that we should be collaborating with is, of course, the WA Police. And I think also it's worthy to mention, so we don't misinform anyone in the community, but when we talk about our CCTV trailers, you know, they are not monitored at all, unless someone can tell me otherwise, but I believe they are not monitored and purely are only deployed for investigative purposes. I understand it, I know that they do give a form of safety to people, but I think this is where the police come in, and I think there is room for further collaboration, because I know the police do monitor a lot of CCTV, and if we worked with them, with our trailers, this could be something that is very, very important, because if we're having stuff monitored, if we're having our CCTV monitored, then straight away it's going to engage a quicker police response to incidents of antisocial behaviour, because by purely just deploying these trailers is not going to get any police response or any response by anybody. It's just going to capture people doing things. So I think that is quite important. So if that's something that can be included as well.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Bain, I understand you've got an amendment you'd like to make. So what we'll do is we'll actually, we've spoken on this amendment at the moment. We'll put it to the vote. If it is adopted by council, then it becomes the substantive motion. If it does, then I'll introduce your amendment for you. You okay with that? Thanks, councillors. There's nothing further. I'll put this matter to the vote. This is the matter of the Councillor Singh's amendment.
The amendment to OC-001-23 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. Thank you, Councillor Singh. The amendment now forms the substantive motion. We have an amendment from Councillor Bain. Councillor Bain, would I just ask you to read what is on the screen? You wanted to add that to Councillor Singh's, well, it's now the substantive motion. Is that on screen, what you proposed? Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please, for Councillor Bain's amendment, once you've read it? Councillor Singh has seconded the amendment. Councillor Bain, I'll invite you to please speak to it.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the City of Canning, we have the third worst suburb for crime. Whilst other hotspots like Northbridge have experienced a decline in crime, Cannington has seen a rise of nearly 50%. Such is the experience of residents of Arthur Street. They took the time and effort to communicate their concerns to us and seek our help at the AGM. Pleasingly, since the agenda briefing, the City has door-knocked the residents of Arthur Street and deployed a mobile CCTV unit in the area. Another measure the City's administration can take is to discuss the Cannington community's concerns and experiences with the local member for Cannington, the Honourable Bill Johnston, MLA. The City of Canning 2022 Community Safety Report prioritises consultation with our community and key stakeholders as an effective way of informing future decisions about safety and security. A meeting with the member for Cannington would be realising this priority and the objectives of the report and will assist the City in achieving its community safety enhancement objectives. A meeting will facilitate the exchange of information about crime in Cannington and assist the City to identify ways that they can be of further assistance and the areas it needs to focus its efforts. The latest crime figures in Cannington are alarming. Working closely and collaborating with the local state member of Parliament in a strategic and coordinated way can only be of help. Thank you to my fellow elected members for considering this amendment. I hope that it receives your support. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the amendment, and as our Deputy Mayor mentioned, security is more of a state government's responsibilities. Every opportunity we can get to involve our member for Cannington to help us out, improving the security and safety in our area is a good opportunity. So I'll support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'll just quickly, I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Spencer Teo, just to provide, I speak in favour of the amendment, just to provide some narrative or some context around what you said, Councillor Bain, in relation to it being the third highest rated crime spot in Western Australia. There needs to be some context. It was a terrific media headline, but the reality is that there's great reasoning behind that, and that is because we've got the second largest shopping centre in Western Australia sitting right in the heart of Cannington, and the largest train station along the whole Armidale line, and every shoplifter, every report that's made in that shopping centre of a pinched purse or an item taken off a shelf goes onto those crime stats, and so that needs to be taken into context, I think, and that was why we were so disappointed with that media report. And that, I'm not having a go at you, of course, I'm just trying to provide some context I've already spoken to the police in relation to that, Superintendent Beer, and there was good reasoning behind those crime figures. It was kind of very much inflated by a number of large facilities we have in our midst. So that was just basically a comment just in relation to that. But I do support the amendment. Thank you for raising it. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
I just have a question. Why is this specific to Arthur Street in Cannington? My concern is we received the feedback from the residents, and it was one resident in the street who seems to have an issue. Can we not just broaden this to say the crime in Cannington? My concern is you're going to have a meeting to talk about one person's concern with a member of parliament when it should be more of a holistic, broader approach to the crime in Cannington.
Can I just answer that on your behalf, Councillor Bain? Sorry, I don't think there's any harm with it, and I don't think it's worth spending 5 minutes debating it and amending it. I think those sorts of things will come up during the conversation anyway. There has been an issue or some isolated issues in Arthur Street. That was the reasoning behind the motion originally. So I think that will be raised in any case, and for all intents and purposes, I'm sure the lady that raised it has probably already spoken to Minister Johnson, so I don't see any harm with it. I take your point. I think you're absolutely right, but I don't think there's worth spending 5 minutes amending the item, and I think it'll come up in that conversation quite organically. Thank you. Shaking of the head is noted. Councillor Sweeney, thank you.
Yeah, look, I don't know what outcome Councillor Bain is looking for by raising this with the Honourable Bill Johnson, because I think in the end he will just flick it down to the superintendent in charge of Cannington Police. But I would just make one comment, because I did read the information contained in the officer's recommendation, and it said in the last 6 months that there's only been one report in Arthur Street made to the police. Now, obviously, there is a lot going on in Arthur Street for these residents, and I think that it's quite common with a lot of places in our metropolitan suburbs that people are just not reporting. And if people reported everything that they saw, then it would reflect and give a better reflection of what actually is going on. Because when the police look at this, they will say, well, there's only one offence that's happened in Arthur Street that's been reported to us in the last 6 months. So it does make it very difficult to ask for extra patrols, to ask for more attention in those sort of areas, or more money when it comes to the government and Bill Johnson, if that's all that's happening. So, I really think that people just have to do a lot more when they see things happen and report things. And I just thought I'd mention that, because that's what the government make their decisions on, is the caption of data. And if we're not doing that, if our residents aren't doing that and helping themselves, then there's not a lot we can do, because those decisions are made ultimately on the data that's captured. Thanks. That's all I'd say.
That's it. That's the message, isn't it? Report crime. Councillor Bain, if no one wishes to speak against the amendment, I will put it to the vote. Anyone wish to speak against it? Thank you. There's no need for you to rebut. There's been no adverse discussion. Councillor Bain, we will just put it to the vote.
Amendment 2 to OC-001-23 has been carried unanimously with 10 in favour.
That being the case, thank you. That amendment then also forms part of the substantive motion. The substantive motion will now be put on screen by governance. They're trying their best to catch up. Thank you very much, ladies. We have the amendment by, let me see, we had, just trying to catch up with where we are. Councillor Singh actually moved it. I seconded it. We've both spoken to it. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? That is the substantive motion, before we put it to the vote? Thank you. I don't think anyone spoke against it. I think we can just go straight to the vote. Councillors, put the... Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
The substantive motion for OC 00123 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. Thank you, councillors. We move on to the next item, which is OC 002 of 23. The title of the report being 2023 Local Government Ordinary Elections. The officer's recommendation is on page 19 of the agenda and is also on screen. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo. A seconder, please, from the floor. Councillor Bain. Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll just move straight into an amendment that I've sent around, if I may, to save some time.
Yes, Councillor Spencer-Teo, we have an amendment here from you. It is now on screen. Can I get you just to read through that and make sure you're happy with what is on screen?
Yep, that's the one. Thank you.
Thank you. I will then ask for a seconder for the amendment.
Somebody, anybody?
Is that seconding it? The Deputy Mayor has a perplexed look on his face, but he is seconding it nevertheless. The Deputy Mayor is a seconder. Councillor Spencer-Teo, please speak to the amendment.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. My rationale behind this amendment is just to manage the candidates, the community and our compliance officers' expectations when it comes to election signage. Our policy recently changed and there was a lot of confusion amongst staff and candidates in this recent by-election. So having been through 2 elections in the last 2 years myself, the placement, moving and removal of signs can be the biggest downfall of campaigning. With this document, everyone will be on the same page and there'll be no excuses for signs being wrongly removed or candidates placing signs in non-compliant locations. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Nothing other to say than I support it.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak against or for? Councillor Singh?
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor, if I may. To the CEO, as per our current policy, what happens when a member running for election places his or her sign on a verge on city's property? So it's non-compliant, but what does city do after that? Can you please explain?
CEO, did you want to answer that, or Director McQuaid? Yeah, can we take it on notice then? We'll take it on notice, but I think the intent... Yep.
Mr. Mayor, my understanding is, please correct me if I'm wrong, as per the policy I read when I was running for election. If a member running for election places their election sign on a verge or something, city's ranger goes there on receiving a complaint and removes it if somebody complains, because it's not supposed to be there, and the sign is kept with the city and offered to the elected member to collect it. Is that incorrect?
I think you're just answering your own question there. We're not sure. I think that's why we're taking it on notice. Director McQuaid?
I don't have the policy to hand, but no, you're not quite correct. My understanding is, and we'll confirm this with you, but if it's on private property and it's not causing any danger to anyone, i.e. it's not obstructing anyone's visibility, then we won't remove it. It is only if it's placed on property where it is obstructing line of sight for vehicle or traffic, or if it's on public property, in which case, yes, we will take the item and we will hold it and we will contact the individual and allow them to come and pick up their sign at an appropriate time.
Thank you. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a point regarding the policy as it's either being reviewed or being made. It's a very, very weak punishment. Somebody is basically not following the local law, and all we are doing is taking their sign with all the care and offering them to take it back, especially a member who's running to make local laws, running for council. So the punishment needs to be a little bit harsh than that. That's just a request that when we develop this policy, rather than offering the signs back, there has to be some sort of a fine. Somebody is breaking the law, there has to be consequences. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Noted. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the amendment. Just a question, perhaps if the city could help with my concern, where it says, and the use of the city's logo, does that also include the City of Canning, the words as part of the intellectual property? Because in the past, there has been issues with candidates saying or having City of Canning on their flyers, and are they or are they not allowed to have City of Canning written on their flyers? City of Canning
You
election.
can definitely
etc.?
write City of Canning, you just can't use the corporate flyer, which is the corporate logo, which I guess is covered by copyright, and also it's unlawful to use it in any case under the Local Government Act, I believe. Director McQuaid? In fact, you know what I might do in the first instance is just ask Councillor Spencer, and I'll just ask you to keep it very brief. What is it in relation to the city's logo? What's the intent there?
Well, again, I think kind of answers itself. We're all still confused as to what is what here. I know in the past people have had a photo outside the City of Canning offices and been told by the electoral officer to remove the logo from that photo. So again, it's so all these questions can be answered, and so we are all on the same page, and so there's no confusion, because there clearly still is.
Again, noted. Thank you very much. Councillor Bain, you happy with that explanation?
Yes, if that's considered in the review, that'd be great. Thank you.
Terrific. Deputy Mayor?
Just through you to Director Bride, can he confirm that the local laws have been changed since Councillor Singh ran for election?
Director Bride?
Through Mr Mayor, 2021, the council adopted revised local laws, which included election signage, so we can certainly distribute those particular clauses to council after the meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Deputy Mayor? You already spoken. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Sweeney?
Yes, I'm going to speak against this. And the reasons I do is out of fairness. And I think that, well, for a start, the council holds information seminars in the lead up to the election, and a lot of these questions are covered in those seminars. And those seminars are for all potential candidates, including elected members, to go to if we are unsure about the process during the elections. So another concern I have also is that, you know, any separate strategy briefing for elected members where other potential candidates can't go to, I think is a disadvantage, and I think it would be perceived by the community as a disadvantage to other candidates coming up in the election. So I think we've got to be very careful here, and I think that you know, we already hold a seminar where everyone can go and ask these sort of questions. I don't want to think that we're going to be holding something that is separate outside to advantage any sitting councillors here when there's when the same candidates on the outside don't get afforded that opportunity. So I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just invite Councillor Spencer Teo to close debate and rebut unless anyone else wishes to speak at the moment. Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo, do you want to just keep your comments just a rebuttal, please?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We've all been in the SIBs. We all pass the local laws. So how that would, we have an unfair knowledge advantage is rather strange. This would be a one-pager document, hopefully a one-pager document that's given to candidates. We're not doing anything secretly behind doors. We were all there passing these local laws, and we still don't know what is what and what we can and can't do. So this is to preempt any issues, and this is to avoid any issues and to provide absolute fairness to candidates and current elected members. So that's all I'm trying to do here. There's no ulterior motive. It's simply to be open and transparent. I'm not asking for a policy review. I'm asking for a policy statement, you could say, is what this will provide. It will detail and outline in very simple terms what the expectations are and what our policies and local laws are. That's it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. We'll put this to the vote. We're just voting on the amendment at the moment, councillors, so this is only in relation to Councillor Spencer Teo's amendment. Thank you, Governors. We'll put the matter to the vote.
The amendment to OC-00223 has been carried with 9 in favour, with Councillor Sweeney voting against the amendment.
Thank you. That then forms part of the substantive motion, which becomes our part 4. The mover for that was Councillor Spencer Teo. The seconder was Councillor Bain. Councillor Spencer Teo, did you wish to speak to the substantive motion?
No, nothing to add. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bain, have you got anything you'd like to add to the substantive motion?
I support the motion, Mr Mayor. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak against the substantive motion? Thank you, councillors. Let's put it to the vote.
Substantive motion OC-00223 has again been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, Governors. We move to item 13.2. Ms Lorraine Driscoll is the responsible officer for this item, the Director of Corporate and Commercial. The item is CC 005 of 23, the title of the report being Proposed Acquisition and Sale of Right-of-Way located at Lot 66, Boulder Street West, Bentley. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 27 of tonight's agenda. Councillors, can I have a mover for that item, please, from the floor? I shall move it from the floor. Deputy Mayor will be the seconder. I support the officer's recommendation and have nothing further to add. Deputy Mayor?
I too support the officer recommendation.
Does any councillor wish to speak against the item? Councillors, let's put it to the vote.
Motion CC 00523 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item CC 006 of 23, the title of the report being Monthly Financial Report, February 2023. The recommendation is on screen and also appears on page 42 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please, councillors? Councillor Bain, thank you. Seconder is Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo?
I too support the officer recommendation. Have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the matter? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC 00623 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move on to item 13.3 on tonight's agenda, the responsible officer being Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Planning and Development. The first item is CD 001 of 23, the title of the report being Right-of-Way in brackets ROW, close brackets strategy. The officer's recommendation is on screen and also appears on page 80 of the agenda. And I note for the purpose of the decision, Council tonight is simply adopting the draft City of Canning right-of-way strategy for the purpose of public consultation. I imagine it will then come back, well, it will come back to this Council. Can I have a mover? Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo is the mover. Seconder, Councillor Sabiri, thank you. Councillor Sabiri. Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I will support the officer recommendation, but if I may make one minor amendment, and that is just to put the word only after consultation, just to kind of cement what you just said, Mr Mayor, that this is only for the purpose of public consultation.
Hang on, where did you want the word only? After the word consultation?
Correct, at the end, right where it is now on the screen.
The Council adopt the draft City of Canning right-of-way strategy for the purposes of public consultation only. Can I just ask Director Bride, have you got an issue with that word being added?
No, Mr Mayor, because that's the intention of the recommendation, so no issue from
That's the
staff.
intention in any case. I'll take that as a minor amendment. Councillor Sabiro, I wouldn't think that you've got any issue with adding that one word. I'll take that as a minor amendment. Consider that added. Councillor Amanda Spencer-T, I'll ask you to speak to it then. Anything further you'd like to add?
Yes, please. The reason why I wanted to do this is just because the report is quite detailed on, the next steps, and I just wanted to make sure that this is, and that my support is quite conditioned on this, purely because we have so many unfunded or underfunded strategies, including those that are very important to our community, like the urban forest strategy and the play provision strategies. I understand the rationale behind this, and I think it has some merit, and if we had some funds sitting in a reserve to fund it, I'd have no hesitation supporting it further. But the reality is that we don't have the funds, and I believe if we did have the funds, they're better spent elsewhere at the moment. But I may be wrong. Maybe our community are keen to see the strategy funded and implemented, which is why I will support it going out to public consultation, but condition that if I'm given the option to increase the budget for the play provision strategy or urban forest, they're certainly where my priorities will be. And once we get the community feedback, then I expect to see this coming back to any funding allocation or implementation going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sabiri, anything to add?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Anything from anybody? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Hall. Look, I'll be speaking against the officer recommendation. With the greatest level of respect to Director Bryde and his team, who I know have invested a lot of time into this, I just don't see this as a priority given, as Councillor Spencer-Teo just mentioned, the amount of infrastructure backlogs that we have. When we were formulating the strategic community plan, I said to the CEO at the time that I don't understand why we're looking at more strategies, more master plans, when we're not even funding and investing into what we were doing at the time. And what came out of that was more master plans, more strategies. For 20 years, the city's underinvested into its infrastructure, and whilst it's only for public consultation, I don't want to see yet another strategy added on to the pile of strategies that we have to try to invest into and deliver. I see this as investing into public realm that benefits X amount, relatively small amount of residents and properties, whilst there's a vast amount of infrastructure investments we need to make to improve infrastructure for thousands of residents. I recognise that there's more to it, this strategy, than just the right-of-ways that are going to be upgraded. But in saying that, I can't throw my support behind it. I recognise what the CEO said last week with respect to council make deliberations at budget times, but I know what happens. We pass, we endorse the strategy, it comes as a line item at the budget and it gets funded. I just don't understand why, if we have extra money, let's invest into strategies that we're not delivering at the moment, master plans that we're not delivering at the moment, investing into public realm that we might get the investment back in 20 years' time. It's not a priority for me at the moment. If the city had invested over the last 20 years properly, then I'd look at this differently. I'd understand why councils like Stirling or Melville might look at this, but the reality is that we're not in that position, and I don't see this as a priority, and that's why I'm not supporting this.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else? Thank you, Councillor Spencer-Teo. I'll ask you to close debate if you wish to.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I can't really argue with what Councillor Kunze said, so I'm not going to bother, other than the fact that we represent our community and we haven't heard from them with respect to this strategy. So, again, I condition the support for that reason only. Thank you.
Thank you. That being the case, we'll put the matter to the vote. Thank you, councillors.
Motion CD-00123 has been carried with 9 in favour, with Councillor Parkinson voting against the motion.
I voted against it.
Sorry, councillors, I'll recall that vote. That's 9 in favour, with Deputy Mayor Kunze voting against the motion.
Thank you, Governors. We move on to CD 002 of 23, Title of the report being Adoption of Scheme Amendment Number 9 to Local Planning Scheme Number 42, Omnibus Amendment. The officer's recommendation is on screen and appears on page 87 of the agenda. Can I have a mover for the item, please? Councillor Sweeney, thank you very much. A seconder? I'll second it from the chair then. Councillor Sweeney?
Yes, I speak strongly in support of this motion. This is going to cut through a lot of red tape, councillors, and streamline processes to help a lot of businesses. The current permissibility in terms of use has been a problem for a lot of businesses, particularly in Canning Vale, which I have had the pleasure of speaking to quite a few people in business, particularly in the industrial and the commercial sectors. This proposal will provide a greater flexibility and allow smaller educational facilities to train people and address much needed labour shortages. It'll also encourage more companies to invest in the city, which can only be of a benefit. It will also provide a greater choice for residents and workers to access medical services by allowing those businesses to grow and expand as a result of these proposed amendments. So I would encourage all councillors to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I speak in favour. It's a relatively legislative minor amendments caused by some changes to legislation and the such. It's an omnibus amendment for that particular reason. I speak in favour. I have nothing further to add. Anyone else wish to speak against? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question, if I may.
Of course.
415 Welshpool Road. So is that still reserved as environmental conservation? Is that correct?
Director?
Through Mr Mayor, that particular property will not form part of the amendment. It's in the background section, so it's not in the doing part of the amendment, so it'll remain as is.
You satisfied with that? Thank you. Councillors, let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CD 00223 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. We move on to the next item, which is CD 003 of 23, feasibility study, multi-level car park, Canning City Centre. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 99 of tonight's agenda. I'll move the item from the chair. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Spencer-Teo. And without wasting any time, councillors, I propose an amendment, and I've been working with the Director and the CEO on it, and I'll have that put on screen. And if I can get a seconder for the amendment, I will then, Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. I will then speak to it. Councillors, I obviously support the officer's recommendation, but I don't feel that Part 2 really encapsulated the broad scope of what council probably should see. It was really restricted to paid parking or parking restrictions in the city centre, and I've just asked the city to assist me to broaden that to a management plan which will actually include consideration about on-street parking, and then report back to this council by way of a SIB before the end of the year, so prior to the December 2023 Ordinary Council meeting. And that just broadens the scope of this. It gives us an opportunity. I think the biggest issue I had with the Urbis report was that it was a current state report which actually didn't look into the future. We all know we're halfway through a 10-year development of the city centre. The Urbis report gave us a snapshot of the demand right now at this moment, but what it didn't do is forecast into the future about what will that demand look like, how are the largest train stations about to be redeveloped on the doorstep of the city centre, how will any future extension of Westfield Carousel, how will any of those things play out and affect demand in that sector. So I really welcome the officer's consideration to the amendment, and I think all it does is just bring an internal report back to council for our consideration at a SIB, and then we'll decide on where it goes from there. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. When I saw the officer's recommendation, I was a little bit confused, I have to admit, so I went and listened to the October meeting where we discussed this, where this notice of motion was presented. And Councillor Bain even said himself that he didn't want to see this being turned into a recommendation that supported metered or paid parking in the city. That's exactly what this officer recommendation has come about. So I support the amendment 100%. There's no denying that there's already existing parking issues in the city centre. You just have to try and get into Carousel on a Saturday or Sunday. Public transport isn't always an option for people buying bulky goods or doing their grocery shopping. I believe that the demand for parking is only going to increase in the future. So I think some work still needs to be done, and perhaps some clarity needs to be provided on exactly the information that we're asking. And I think this is a good idea that it's coming back later this year so that we have that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the amendment, which has certainly changed my mind on the officer recommendation. Given what Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo said, that was my declaration at the time. Just a brief note in regard to when we are looking to, well, we're not going to provide an OCM now, it's going to be a strategic issues briefing, which is fantastic. Just for the record, I don't think that the installation of paid parking bays and ticket machines will be well received by residents living in city centre residential streets, including Marrimup and River Roads. We really need to consider that when we come back to the SIB, and hopefully the city takes that on board, because formalising paid parking bays with meters in these they're quiet neighbourhood streets that just happen to be part of the city centre, and that will bring traffic, both vehicle and pedestrian, and even more abandoned shopping trolleys into their streets. So that's something that we really need to look at. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Spencer-Teo, have a question?
Yeah, just a question. Do we currently have resident permit parking in the city centre at all?
Director?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, we don't.
We don't. That's a no.
Could that possibly be a consideration going forward with this?
We've got a nod of the head from Director Bride. I think that would be one of the
Yeah, we can certainly look at that as part of the SIB. in
Excellent. So I
December.
think that would address your concerns, won't it, Councillor Bain? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
You're talking about with like what they've done in Subiaco and that, where resident parking is
Correct. Like if
provided?
you only have a driveway that can fit one car, but you've got two cars, you get a permit to park on the street at no
Okay.
charge during certain times.
Yeah, that seems like a good consideration. Anyone wish to speak against it? Councillor Sabiri.
I'm not speaking against it. I guess it's sort of not really entirely deviated from the officer's recommendation. Just probably a bit more study added to it. I do hope that the Urbis report didn't give any feedback, I guess, on spaces for e-ridables, bikes, etc. And I think that's a really important thing to consider when we talk about city centres. We should really be trying to dissuade people from driving into them and trying to probably get more public transport or public or active transport. So I guess I hope that as part of the new report, we can also look at e-parking, e-ridables, and bicycle parking if we're looking at having that kind of installment in the multi-storey car park, I guess, because that will at least encourage people to ride, because there's facilities where they can park their bicycles, park their scooters. And yeah, really, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we put it to the vote? Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just confirm that doesn't the structure plan actually make sure that new developments provide facilities for cycling and that? Isn't that the whole point of why we have a lower parking ratio than normal?
Director Bride?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. Yes, certainly there are controls around bicycle parking, so there's certain ratios of numbers of bicycle bays that are required based on the amount of employees and floor space. So that's already catered for within the activity centre plan, but it doesn't go into, I guess, some of the issues that Councillor Sabiri's raising around, you know, whether they're e-scooters or e-ridables. It talks more about having space for this technology rather than promoting or requiring that to be leveraged. There is a planning policy that we're looking to bring to council around electric vehicle provision, especially around the city centre. I know we've discussed that previously, but we'll be looking to bring that to council probably in a couple of months. So there could be an opportunity to expand that policy at that time.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Director Pride. So just following on, when Westfield Carousel did their stage 1, and if they do stage 2, there's no actual compulsion for them to provide those facilities?
Director Broad.
Through Mr Mayor, there was conditions around end of trip bicycle bays, but at the time of the 2015 approval, there was no requirement that they had to provide a certain number of electric vehicle bays. Obviously, we advocate and would like to see more shopping centre developments take that up, but it wasn't a condition of their development application.
Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, just to clarify, I mean, with respect to bicycles and two-wheeled, obviously now we have e-scooters.
Yes, again, bicycle bays, but it didn't specify the type. It just basically had provision for. So there is, lockers, end-of-trip facilities and bicycle bays provided as part of the expansion of Westfield Carousel.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak with the amendment? Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, I am going to speak against it because the amendment still talks about paid parking, and I'm not a fan of paid parking. I think once that comes in and once we start doing that, it can get out of control quite easily. The study by Irvis, I thought, was quite comprehensive and considered a number of factors and comparisons, but ultimately revealed that the multi-level car park idea was not financially viable for the council to invest in. A key factor of the study by Irvis suggests that if we made the residents pay for on-street parking, there was potential to achieve a higher occupancy rate in a multi-level car park. Well, I don't know about that. That troubles me somewhat. I don't really like that. It doesn't really align with our strategic purpose of being a very welcoming city. And parking enforcement, I feel, isn't really treating our residents very well. So I believe the amendment and this motion now has gone off track from its original intention. We are now being asked to consider paid parking in the city and parking enforcement, which is not something that I'm aligning myself to. I never have. So I would strongly ask all councillors to have a think about this and urge councillors to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I might just close debate then unless anyone else wishes to speak on the matter. Councillors, I'll just speak just in rebuttal, only because I'm just surprised by what I just heard, because Councillor Sweeney, if you can find anywhere in that amendment that mentions paid parking, I'd ask you to raise your hand and talk to it. You just said that we're now being asked to make a paid parking decision. We're not actually. That's completely false. We're actually not being asked to make a decision at all. The matter's coming to a SIB, a strategic issues briefing. We're not making any decision on anything. And paid parking has not been a consideration and is not currently a consideration. Let's wait until the management of street parking report comes back. Councillor Bain raised a moment ago, and that was also a conversation raised by Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo about free parking for residents in there that actually reside in that area. That's the opposite of paid parking. And I'd also make the point that in a commercial area like that, and I know there are councillors here that actually own commercial properties, that a lot of those bays on the streets in our city centre are actually taken up for the full day by that free parking is taken up by people who are catching the train into the city to avoid the $2 fee. I think that's only anecdotal, but I think that sticks. And if we can introduce some sort of parking management, doesn't necessarily have to be paid parking, but parking management that restricts the amount of time that people can actually sit in those bays to maybe an hour or 2 hours, surely that would be a significant boost to the small businesses in that area, including restaurants along Cecil Avenue that have been fighting through COVID restrictions for 2.5 years and have had their financial concerns and their businesses destroyed in some cases by that. So I'm not sure what Councillor Sweeney is on about. I'm not sure where he heard what he said. No one has mentioned, I certainly haven't mentioned paid parking, and that's not what this amendment is about. Councillors, I've got nothing further to say. I will put it to the vote.
Amendment to CD 003-23 has been carried 9 in favour, with Councillor Sweeney voting against the amendment.
Thank you. The amendment now forms part of the substantive motion. I move the substantive motion. Councillor Spencer Teo seconded. We went straight then to an amendment. I don't propose to speak any further on the matter. I think I'm comfortable we can probably just put it straight to the vote. Does anyone wish to speak against this substantive motion before we put it to the vote? I think everybody's had a chance. Thank you. Let's put it to the vote.
Substantive motion CD 003-23 has been carried with 9 in favour and Councillor Sweeney voting against the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Governance. We move on to item 13.4, the responsible officer being Director Warren Bowe, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. It's EN 004 of 23. The title of the report being Award of Tender FM 035 of 20, Street Furniture Services and Advertising. Councillors, I propose to move an alternate motion from the Chair, and I will ask for Governance to actually put that up on screen. That was circulated to the Council earlier this evening, and apologies for the lateness of it. I would ask for a seconder to it, and then I will speak to it once you had an opportunity to read through it. If everyone's had an opportunity to read through it, I'll ask for a seconder, please. Councillor Spencer Teo is the seconder for the alternate motion. I'll speak to the alternate motion. Councillors, we've had a number of discussions around the tender in relation to the street furniture services and advertising. It's been subject to some media scrutiny, but that shouldn't sway us from our responsibility tonight. My position on this is, and I've made this perfectly clear, that until the state and federal government take the lead on these matters, and I note even this afternoon that the Premier of Victoria, Dan Andrews, balked at Green's proposal to ban all fast food advertising on public transport in Melbourne. I'm wondering why the small city of Canning would introduce restrictive covenants to businesses that are not performing any illegal act. So what I'm actually proposing here is that the city of Canning does actually include a number of conditions that I think safeguard this council going into the future, but take away a number of highly restrictive conditions that appeared in the previous tender document. And in my view, and I think it's the view shared by a number of us on this council, that we didn't actually receive value for money from that tender because of a number of restrictions that were imposed on the tenderers. And I think and they weren't all about fast food, by the way. One of them, of course, was in relation to who can advertise. Commercial advertisers needed to be actually located pretty much in the city of Canning. If you didn't actually have a business in the city of Canning, you couldn't actually advertise. And what that did was that prevented any national advertising by any firm that would be willing to pay the fee to run a national advertising campaign from advertising in the city of Canning, which I just felt was not in keeping with the expectations of our community. We also had some discussion in relation to democracy and why would we be preventing any members and candidates from engaging in or advertising on our furniture, and I think it's a right as a democracy that people be allowed to actually advertise on our street furniture. I see absolutely no reason for it. If people wish to run against me as mayor or to run for a state council position, a state parliament position and advertise, I have absolutely no issue with it. At times we've been actually told that local government elections are people often say to me when they occur that they didn't even know that the local government elections are actually on. I didn't even know that an election was on. Well, it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that people are well aware of their local elected members and also their state and federal counterparts, and they know who to reach when they need to. So I don't see how in a democracy we would actually prohibit advertising of any political nature. We have strict governance around what can be actually advertised. Those decisions will be made by our CEO on a delegated authority, and those are in relation to making sure that any advertisements actually comply with the state and federal laws and voluntary codes of conduct established by the advertising industry, and obviously any advertisement deemed illegal, immoral, offensive, deceptive, false or misleading will be removed at the contractor's expense. You'll notice in item D, there is a matter in relation to the advertising of alcohol. The contractor must comply with the alcohol advertising pre-vetting system developed by the Outdoor Media Association of Australia. And I'll just give you a slight inkling into what they've actually developed. This is a highly self-regulated industry. They've actually self-regulated a number of things and gone so far as to make sure that any advertising for liquor doesn't include any person under the age of 25 and doesn't actually depict any person or any consumption of alcohol that may change a mood or an environment or attract people to drinking. Now, they are self-imposed conditions that have been put on them by the Outdoor Media Association, and I think those are the sorts of safeguards that we wish to see here as a council. But having said that, I make the point again that we have many businesses. We are an economic powerhouse here in the City of Canning. You cannot drive up our city centre without seeing many businesses who may be fast food businesses, but I would also make the point that many of those businesses, McDonald's and Hungry Jack's for two, are slowly but surely changing their menus to include healthy choices. So those healthy choices, I guess, are also mass-produced. For all intents and purposes, under what was proposed to council, they would be banned, but shouldn't we be promoting those healthy food choices by those fast food providers? Shouldn't we at least be doing that? So I don't see this as an expectation of our community that councils should delve into making decisions around choice for citizens that have not been mandated by state and federal governments. When the state and federal government mandate that those types of advertising should be banned, well then obviously we will follow suit. But it's not up to small local governments to dictate to its residents the choices that they should be allowed to make. There was some discussion about children and about the effect of advertising on children. Well, those are decisions by parents. Parents have the choice to determine what their children shall do and what they should eat. That is not a decision for a council and the 11 members of it to actually push onto the 100,000 citizens. I think we need to take a responsible point of view to this, and I think there are sufficient safeguards in what has been proposed, and to remove those constrictive and restrictive covenants that I feel have significantly affected the value of this tender. So I'm not speaking in favour of any particular sector, but if this city is going to take the rates of those businesses, and I would also make the point that all of those businesses are employing local people, including young people, I think they are contributing to our community. And if we ban these sectors, where the hell do we stop? Do we ban advertising by Coles, who have the biggest confectionery aisle that I've ever seen? Do we ban them? Where do we stop with this when we start deciding on who and what is going to be a fast food provider and what sort of businesses are providing the sort of choices that we feel we should foist onto our citizens. So I don't think we should get too deep into this. I think we've discussed it. I hope that I've read the sentiment of the room, and I know there will be different opinions on this, but I'm certainly of the view that the City of Canning should not wade into an argument around whether or not we prevent fast food choices or liquor to be advertised or gambling or anything else. I think we should take a sensible, pragmatic approach to it and make sure that our advertising tender, when it goes to re-tender, and that's what we're proposing, I'm hoping that we'll get a far better return, financial return for the city's residents. And I know that we have safeguards in there that will make sure that we are keeping within the expectations of our wider and broader community. And I know that everyone won't share that view, but I certainly hope that the majority of councillors tonight will. That's all I have to say. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I too support your alternate motion. I had an issue with the city's public health plan as being used as if it was a policy or a local law. It's neither. It's a plan. It's a plan that if we applied the same set of principles and restrictions to other business units within Canning, we would see many unlawful and unenforceable decisions being made both by council and by administration. As you said, where do we stop? Does our public health plan become the reason we stop providing our very popular food truck events? Does the plan stop us from allowing our fast food ratepayers from advertising on their own buildings and their own leased lands? Next month, we have a JDAP application for a fast food outlet in Bentley. Yep, everything the Cancer Council warned us about last week, fast food, low socioeconomic area, etc. Last year, we had an application for the Krispy Kreme in Cannington. Now, not every councillor supported that development application, and some voted against it due to the unhealthy nature of the products provided. Our planning department told us that the development complied and there was no legal basis for us to deny the application. If we did reject it, we would lose at SAT. The state government would override the decision and we would have wasted tens of thousands of dollars of our ratepayers' money fighting a losing battle, and Krispy Kreme would still be there, albeit...
Councillor Sabiri, are you raising a point of order?
Yeah, sorry, it's not relevant to the advertising.
You need to tell me in the standing orders what section you're referring
Relevance?
to. You need to tell me the section of it. It's actually in the standing orders. I'll come back to you. Just to make sure you keep your comments relevant to the discussion.
So 100%
Talking
relevant.
about JDAPs at the moment, so I think...
Yeah, and the public health plan, that if we applied it to JDAPs, we wouldn't be approving development applications for fast food outlets. Finally, the constraints on electoral signage also concerned me. They were unjustifiable fetters on free political communication to allow an incumbent to promote themselves in their office and not those seeking public office offers a perception that the city's endorsing a particular candidate or political party. There was a Supreme Court case against the City of Armidale back in 2013 where the administration tried to remove political advertising within the city, and according to Supreme Court Justice Martin, and I quote, "There's a strong arguable case that the City of Armidale's laws were a contravention of the implied constitutional freedom of political communication." So this is not an issue of morality. I believe it's an issue of law. If the state government can advertise certain things, I just can't see why the local government can. And with this alternate motion, it's clear that if the state government does make good on their election commitment, which they're 6 years into government, I don't know why it's taking so long, and if they do ban fast food advertising, then this tender will still comply with that. But if I may, I've just had a thought, Mr Mayor. I think it's probably wise of me to declare an impartiality on this item if this does go ahead, in the sense that what you said earlier, my son is an employee of a local fast food business within Canning. So if I can just put that on the record, that would be appreciated.
We'll have to get governance. Can I ask you to provide Councillor Spencer Teo with a declaration or disclosure of interest form before the meeting is out? Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Thank you. Councillor Sabiri.
I'll be speaking I'll be speaking for the office recommendation that was before us before and against what we have now. I guess I'd like to thank Ms. Ledger for her presentation tonight. Questions or statements like it's parents' responsibility to watch what children eat, basically views or statements that don't take the power of advertising into account. As policymakers and regulators, basically, it is our responsibility to safeguard public health. So from a regulatory perspective, we should be trying to get the population more healthy and curb unnecessary messages that are deemed predatory to certain groups. In brief, we are the gatekeepers. We know problems like diabetes, obesity, hypertension, that pressure our public health system correlate directly to junk food and alcohol. We already know investment in prevention yields better health and cost-effective outcomes. We also know it's not likely that we are going to get more money by opening the floodgates. And we've heard a lot about where do we stop, but I think we should be a bit more concerned about where do we start. I like to see Canning be a leader in this field, and when it comes to banning the advertising of ban the advertising of junk food, at least on our assets. So this is why I ask that we support the original officer recommendation and take on board expert advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely respect your efforts for maximizing the value of the contract, of the advertisement contract we are giving it out. I can see your motion is definitely trying to get the maximum value for money we can get out in the market. However, my conscience doesn't allow for any sort of alcohol, tobacco, or fast food related advertisement to be put on public places within City of Canning, because that City of Canning, that's where I can make a difference at this point of time. State government, federal laws, let's say, out of my reach. So by not supporting this motion, that's what I'm trying to do, is to stop any alcohol-related advertisement. And I'll share some facts. Money is important, but health should always be the #1 priority, especially when it comes to community health. Even a slightest compromise with community health, we shouldn't be giving any priority to money in doing so. Our public health plan has an explanation of health status of our community. Under Section 10, which demonstrates the lifestyle and biomedical risk factors, such as eating too much fast foods, consuming too much alcohol, being overweight, etc., which can contribute to the development of chronic disease. The plan also includes data on alcohol-related hospitalizations. Heart disease is the #1 killer of residents, followed by dementia. Both diseases have been strongly linked to lifestyle and biomedical risk factors, such as eating fatty foods, high sugar consumption, not exercising adequately, being overweight, and smoking. Just to wrap it up, I'll share a couple of examples. And it's just my opinion. Steve Jobs, he had all the money in the world, just to compare money and health, but he could not stop his death. So at certain point, when we lose health to a stage, money cannot help. On a personal level, I'll share this if it helps. During my service in Australian Army, I lost a part of my knee. And there is absolutely no treatment in this world at this time which can restore my knee to its original condition. My point is, we should not be compromising health for the sake of money, no matter how big or small the gain is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for? Against? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be speaking against the alternative motion. I support the officer's original recommendation. Just to be very clear, fast food companies will not be banned or excluded from advertising on the city street furniture under the proposed contract that is under the officer's recommendation. They're not banned. They're not excluded. They just won't be able to put up pictures of burgers and fried chicken, etc. The recommendation is a position between full restrictions and open slather, with consideration given to our health plan. I don't think the amenity of our suburbs will be enhanced with more pictures of fast food on city assets up and down Canning streets. There's already more than enough fast food advertising on the Albany Highway. Putting up more pictures of burgers and nuggets will contribute to the city, to the area, diminishing in its amenity. Also, importantly, I would not feel comfortable with pictures of the week's cheap fried chicken lunch special or sweet alcoholic drinks on bus stops outside of our schools. As the council pointed out, fast food companies will do this. It is part of their well-worn targeting advertising strategy. By allowing unrestricted advertising by the fast food multinationals, we may also put out of reach opportunities for local businesses to advertise. Also, it's not possible to say that if the city went to re-tender, that a new contract will bring substantially more income, or that the same companies will be falling over each other to apply again. It's not guaranteed. It is a risk. The city considers the previous tender value for money. Revenue should not be the only thought here as part of the tender process and the chief driver. As Councillor Singh mentioned, health is also very important. And it is also the guaranteed $2.5 million in the renewal and maintenance of public infrastructure that ratepayers don't have to pay for is also at stake with this decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney, I saw your hand up earlier. Councillor Sweeney, did you want to ask a question or speak?
I'll go after Councillor Spencer Teo.
Councillor Spencer Teo, did you want to ask a question?
Sorry, just a quick question. Just to clarify what Councillor Bain just said, in item E5, it says that must not promote fast foods or the consumption of fast foods. There seems to be a notion that directional signage is not the promotion of consumption of fast foods. Am I correct in saying that?
Director Bowe, have you got a comment on that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we've considered whether or not directional signage would comply with the current contract that was responded to by the market, and we're of the view that directional signage would be permitted, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Just for the record, so directional signage promoting fast food outlets would be permitted. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, I've only got a couple of things to say, to add. I speak against the officer's original recommendation, but the first thing I want to point out is that, I've heard a lot of comments tonight about the influence of fast food has on things like diabetes. This is not correct. For people that unfortunately have type 1 diabetes, that is an autoimmune disease and has nothing to do, and it's quite insulting to type 1 diabetics for that to get spread around. It has nothing to do with what they eat. It's more aligned to Parkinson's disease or dementia or something like that, but certainly not to have anything to do with junk food or their diet controls. And secondly, type 2 diabetes is something different. But secondly, I've heard also tonight, and we had a presentation, and I thank the lady, I think her name was Melissa Leder, from the Cancer Foundation. I think she came and gave us a deposition. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your surname correctly. And there was a lot of information about how fast food influences our youth. Well, I don't know about that because there's no real proof of that, and to what level. So I think that the biggest problem facing our youth today is drug addiction. That is by far the biggest problem. And vaping. And to put things into some sort of context here, I think most people would agree with that. I think everyone would have some association with what drugs does with our youth, either directly through a family or through other family members or even with yourself. So with that being said, I have never seen on any of our bus shelters any advertising for crystal meth or cocaine or heroin or vaping anywhere. but we have a problem with our youth today that is heavily influenced by drug addiction. So I really don't know how much a burger or a chicken nugget has on the influence of our youth. I'd also like to add that, you know, there were other comments, but I'd also like to add about the Olympic Games. Number one sponsor in the Olympic Games is a fast food outlet. And, you know, we look at athletes like Usain Bolt. When he was interviewed at the Olympics, his diet consisted of chicken nuggets. So I think we have to be careful. And I think also I just wanted to add something else to what we heard tonight from the deposition, is that places like McDonald's also spend millions and millions of dollars in charities every year for research in cancer and juvenile diabetes. If it wasn't for McDonald's, we wouldn't have Ronald McDonald House at hospitals, which, you know, provides accommodation for families with sick children. So it's not just about fast food and what it does with our health. I think everybody agrees we all want a healthier lifestyle. But I think from what I'm hearing tonight, some of the things that are being thrown around here without any evidence at all, apart from some assumptions and perceptions, I think can be dangerous in this argument. So in terms of the original motion, I would strongly advise everyone to speak against that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak before I close debate? Deputy Mayor Ben Kunzer.
Yes, Mayor Holt, look, I speak in favour of your alternative recommendation. Look, personally, I think this would have been great if we actually discussed the controls within the contract earlier in the process. Then we wouldn't be at the situation at the end of the tender process discussing something that we're not agreeing with those proposed controls. We're now having to go back out to tender. I believe the city should be focusing on maximising its financial returns for the city through the contract, which I don't believe has occurred. Furthermore, as I've probably indicated earlier, I don't understand some of these controls as decided by staff. Number one being, and the biggest issue for me, is the restrictions that would not allow citizens seeking public office from advertising. I've run for public office. I've never advertised. I've never proposed to advertise on a bus seat or a bus shelter, and I don't imagine I ever will. But we cannot ever forget how fortunate we are to live in a country like Australia, in a free democracy. Comparatively, there are many out there that aren't free democracies. Billions of citizens around the world live under authoritarian regimes, and I have no understanding why local governments, and you can show us all the other local governments, restrict people from advertising, seeking public office for all three tiers of government, state, federal and local. We should welcome people putting their hands up for public office and celebrate our right to cast a vote on election day. Some people apparently have a concern with using public infrastructure. Election day is held at schools. The signs are all over public infrastructure on election day. Where else would you hold an election? We not only have an implied right of political expression here in Australia, but implied right of expression. Freedom of speech. It should be something that we always celebrate every day. And I don't understand why we'd be restricting certain businesses from advertising. And I don't actually understand why local government's been focused on in this space, where I know it's mentioned that apparently the state government has election commitment, but I must say the last state election was extremely frustrating because there were no election commitments. Find an election commitment on this. There isn't. The state government hasn't done anything in this space. The state government and federal government regulate advertising. I've seen in the last 5-6 weeks since we've been discussing this, many Perth Transport Authority buses drive past me with the Zinger burgers on them. I haven't bought one, but it would be my choice to buy one. But more and more, we're sanitising the world, and I recognise that people are talking about wanting better health outcomes, but there are alternative approaches. My heritage is Germany. They don't hide alcohol from children. They don't put it on a pedestal that makes our culture get to a point where when they turn 18, kids go out and drink as much as they can because they've never been allowed to. At 14, you're allowed to drink with your parents at a pub in Germany. At 16, you can go to a pub and have a beer by yourself without your parents. They don't get to 18 and then go binge because it's been restricted to them their whole lives. There are alternative processes and approaches, and just because we're sanitising and restricting seeing certain things doesn't mean we end up in a better outcome. So I support trying to get the best financial outcome for the city, and that's by supporting the alternative recommendation and complying with all the requirements as you've proposed, Mr Mayor.
Does anyone else wish to speak before I close the debate? Councillors, I'll just quickly close debate, and I don't want to take up too much time. Look, to be frank, I think we need to separate our role here on council from our own private, personal views on matters. You may privately not be somebody that partakes in alcohol or believes that we should be drinking alcohol, and you may be somebody that thinks we shouldn't be drinking Coke. But you do. This is not about philosophical choices here tonight. It's about council acting as a board of directors and not looking at invoking our own private personal views on our citizens without a mandate to do it. Because until you've actually been to your community to ask how they feel, I don't feel we have a right to actually take away choices from people. And it is about choices. It's really about censorship. But we're taking away our choices from people. Councillor Sweeney made a really good point about some of the good that these businesses do. And I'm not focusing on fast food, but it seems that council seems to be focusing there. So that's where I'll put my comments. I make the point again about these fast food companies. This is not the evil empire we're speaking about. These are legitimate, lawful businesses that employ hundreds of thousands of Australians, including young people and mums and dads, and they contribute to sporting clubs. Now, you might be completely philosophically against that, but the reality is that they do. The state and federal government have the right, and have done, to ban this if they thought strongly enough that they should. It's not up for us to ban it. The federal and state government have banned single-use plastics. They've banned all tobacco advertising. They haven't banned betting and gambling and liquor and anything else, but they can if they thought they should, and they haven't. So why should the City of Canning tonight, we 11 people representing 100,000 people, decide that we're going to take away those choices from our community, and we will actually make those choices for them? I just don't think it's within our remit. And just based on some of the comments here tonight about proliferation of advertising for fast food, I'd make the point I know we've all read the report, but the current tender, the current contract in the City of Canning that's been in play now for more than a decade, doesn't have any of the restrictions that we are proposing in this current tender. And I, for one, can't see every one of our bus stops and shelters and seats covered in hamburgers. They're just not. So anyone that believes that by changing to this alternate motion tonight is going to suddenly see a proliferation of different advertising, well, they've had the opportunity to advertise like that for many years, and they have not done so. What we're saying is that the recommendation by the city, which had decided to take away all those abilities, those choices, was not, I felt, in keeping what our community is asking us to do. So I think tonight, as a board of directors, as a council here representing 100,000 citizens, and many of whom work in businesses that will be targeted by the restrictions that some of you feel that we should place on our community. They work in those businesses and they pay their bills based on the income from those businesses, and that's how they send their children to school, and that's how they live. It's not up to us to remove advertising in that manner. So I would ask, even if you spoke against the matter, to please consider changing your mind on this. It's not up to us to take a philosophical stance on something that I feel is well beyond our remit and beyond the expectations of our community. Thank you, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Alternate motion EN 00423 has been carried 7 in favour, with councillors Bain, Parkinson and Singh voting against the motion.
I think there's an issue with Councillor Parkinson's voting tonight. That's twice you've called that he's voted against something in governance, and he clearly has not. Councillor Can I ask you to call the vote again or just clarify? Governance, I'm happy to call a show of hands if you'd like in the interim to take the pressure off. Thank you, councillors. Please cast your vote in a moment. Governors, we're having some issues. I'm just going to actually call for a show of hands. Can I just ask all in favour? And against? Against being Councillor Bain, Councillor Sabiri and Councillor Singh. Thank you, Governors. I've called the vote. The matter has been carried. Thank you. Thank you, councillors, for the debate. We will move to item 7.5. The responsible officer being Dr. Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Customer and Community. It's CO001 of 23, review and adoption of Disability Access and Inclusion Plan for 2023 to 2028. The officer's recommendation is on screen and also is on page 121 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo. The Deputy Mayor has seconded it. Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank and acknowledge the work and effort of staff in the Canning Access and Inclusion Advisory Group. This plan aligns with the Access and Inclusion Plan recently adopted by Council, and it's a step in the right direction to acknowledge and address those issues faced by community living with a disability, accessing the services in the City of Canning. No amount of training can ever compare with those who have first-hand lived experiences. And I mean, when your advisory group is made up of so many community members, who are we to question or argue? It's for this reason that I fully support the officer's recommendation, and I look forward to Canning working harder and smarter to meet the needs and ensure all of our community members feel welcome and supported.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, if I had my way, this would have been first in the agenda. I think that this can't go through quickly. It's extremely important, this document and the work that's been done by staff. I want to echo Councillor Spencer-Teo's comments, thank all the work that staff have done in this space, both over the last 5 years, but also developing this plan for the next 5 years, but also the work done by those people living in our community who live with a disability who have contributed to this. It's extremely important that we hear from those that this will affect the most. But I want to thank Douglas and Zell, who came last week and presented, and Zell said something extremely profound in the fact that I just said it about this, who benefits those people who this will benefit, but the reality is that at any time we can be struck down and get a disability. And so this is important for every single resident living in the City of Canning. The things that we can do as we upgrade our infrastructure to make them more accessible, to actually make our services more accessible, to make sure people's voices are heard. The number of things that we can do as an organisation to make things better for everyone, especially those people living with a disability. We've done some fantastic things over the last 5 years. I won't go into individual ones, but I think some of the achievements that we've had or investments that we've had have been fantastic, but I think the next 5 years will be even more profound as we are building upon what has already happened. But look, I just want to say thanks, and I hope this goes a long way to making Canning a better place for everyone, especially those living with a disability. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the item before we put it to the vote? Councillor Sweeney, you got a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I do have a quick look. Yeah, I strongly support this motion, and I concur with the comments that's already been said. I just have, just out of curiosity, I do have just one question. How many disabled people do we have employed at the city at the moment?
Director, do you want to take that on notice, or are you able to answer it?
No, I will have to take that on notice,
Okay,
Councillor
all right.
Sweeney.
Councillor Sweeney,
Thank you.
anything further? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Unless there's anything further, I think we might put that to the vote. Thank you.
Motion CO 00123 has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. We move on to item 14, which is motions of which previous notice has been given. There are none. Before I get to urgent business, and I apologise, Councillor Spencer T, I nearly forgot. I understand that you have an apology you'd like to make tonight, and thank you for sending through the information to me earlier. I do apologise again for not calling it forward earlier. I'm pleased to see that this is a result of a action that was found to have been unintentional, but I will still ask you to read your apology to the meeting as you're required to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I advise this meeting that a complaint was made to the Local Government Standards Panel in which it was alleged that I contravened Regulation 18 of Division 4 of the Local Government Model Code of Conduct, Regulations 2021, when I published an advertorial in the Canning Examiner newspaper stating that certain parties had made defamatory statements and implying that those parties had agreed that the statements were defamatory. The panel found that I breached Regulation 18 of the said regulations in making such a statement and implication. I acknowledge that I should not have made the relevant statement, and I now apologise to Mr Aldridge and Ms Barbara for making such a statement and implication.
Thank you, Councillor. We will move on to urgent business at item 15, and there is none tonight. At item 16, confidential matters. I'd like to thank have we got any members? We do. Hi, Sharon, how are you going? I'd like to thank members of the public for their attendance tonight and ask that they please leave the council chambers in order for council to consider a number of confidential matters. Can I have a mover and a seconder from the floor, please? That confidential items OC 003 of 23, CO 002 of 23 and EN 003 of 23 be dealt with behind closed doors in accordance with section 5.23 in brackets 2 of the Local Government Act of 1995. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Sabiri. Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Seconder? Councillor Bain, thank you. Let's put the matter to the vote.
The motion to close doors for confidential session has been carried unanimously with all 10 in favour.
Thank you. For the purpose of the recording, there are no members of the public in the meeting, and I'll just ask that the governance ensure that live streaming has been paused while the confidential items are discussed. Thank you, councillors. I'm just going to, before we finish, just read aloud for the sake of the meeting, the decisions of council in relation to the 3 confidential matters. In relation to OC 003 of 23, title of the report being Cannington Leisureplex litigation, the officer's recommendation was that council endorse the recommendation at paragraph 32 of the confidential report. That matter was carried. Governance, can I just ask you to tell me what the call was on that?
The motion was carried unanimously with 10 in favour.
Thank you. We then move on to the next item, which was CO 002 of 23, the title of the report being Canning Lodge. The officer's recommendation was that council adopt the recommendation as outlined in paragraph 143 of the confidential report. 2, upon the Chief Executive Officer communicating this council resolution to all Canning Lodge residents, in brackets, and their representatives, Canning Lodge staff and the Department of Health and Ageing, this report will no longer be considered confidential, in brackets, excluding attachments 1 to 3, and may be made publicly available. And 3, prior to Part 2 being completed, Attachment 4 provides key messaging that may be utilised for responding to queries from the public, media or others. That matter was carried 9 in favour, 1 against, those against being Councillor Sweeney. Final matter of the night was EN 003 of 23, the title of the report being Future Management of Whaleback Golf Course. The officer's recommendation had been that council endorses the recommendation as outlined in paragraph 44 of the confidential report, and 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to undertake the key actions as outlined in paragraph 45 of the confidential report. I'm pleased to say that matter was endorsed unanimously by the council, 10 in favour. Councillors, the time is now 8:49 p.m. I now declare the meeting closed, and I would like to thank everybody for their attendance here this evening. Thank you, governance, thank you, staff, and thank you, council.